Good evening. Let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event, which is live for all of us on the third floor lobby, but we're also joined by a great many online for this collaboration with the Museum of Modern Art. We've had a good many collaborations with MoMA over the past years, among them Toward a Concrete Utopia, Architecture in Yugoslavia, 1948 to 1980, and the more recently opened exhibition, The Project of Independence, Architectures of Decolonization in South Asia, 1947 to 1985, for which Cooper Union students contributed a great deal with the crafting of exquisite models, and thank you for those invitations, both of which were lead curated by Martino Stirli, who's here with us tonight. Martino is the Philip Johnson Chief Curator of Architecture and Design at the Museum of Modern Art, New York, a role he assumed in March of 2015. He's also the co-curator together with Evangelos Kotsioris, sorry for the pronunciation, of MoMA exhibition Renew, Reuse, Recycle, Recent Architecture from China, an exhibition in part which gives rise to the opportunity for tonight's esteemed guest lecturer, Zhu Pei. Following the presentation, I will join Zhu Pei on stage to make a few prompts and in turn invite some questions. So to help us introduce tonight's speaker, please help me in welcoming Martino to the podium. Thank you, Martino.
Thank you so much, Nader, for this very generous invitation. And, you know, you're mentioning the year-long, extremely, wonderful collaboration we've been having with the Cooper Union. I can only say I am extremely, extremely grateful for your vision and for Elizabeth's vision and for many, many people's vision and for all the fabulous work that the students of the Cooper Union have been doing to produce the models for these two shows, which really are extraordinary. You should all be very proud to be associated with this institution. I'm very proud that we are able to show these wonderful models in our current exhibition, The Project of Independence. But that, of course, is not the reason why we're here tonight. The event is organized in conjunction with the ongoing exhibition Renew, Reuse, Recycle, Recent Architecture from China, which is currently on view in the street front gallery of the Museum of Modern Art on 53rd Street. The exhibition features 8 projects by a younger generation of architects, one of them being the Imperial Kiln Museum by Zhu Pei, that we will be hearing about in just an instant. And all of these 8 projects on view are also represented in the museum's collection. I also want to acknowledge my co-curator and brother-in-arms, Evangelos Kotsioris, who was instrumental in pulling this exhibition off. And obviously, I want to thank again the Cooper Union and Nader for hosting and co-organizing this event tonight. Unlike the urban mega projects and spectacular architectural objects that have been built in China in the past couple of decades, this younger generation of architects in China, of which Zhu Pei is a part, and that are the focus of our exhibition, is interested in small-scale interventions in the already existing built context. And much of their work has occurred outside of the large population centers in secondary cities or even in the rural countryside. Collectively, the 8 projects on view that we select for our exhibition illustrate what it means to build in China today, and they explore how modern architecture can be firmly grounded in the country's unique cultural context, of which we here in the West know so little about. The work of Zhu Pei, I think, speaks in an exemplary way specifically to this ambition. Furthermore, the exhibition examines careful yet decisive interventions that serve as a progressive blueprint for a less extractive future for architectural practice at large. Renew, Reuse, Recycle presents 8 resourceful projects that apply a wide range of methodologies, including the adaptive reuse of former industrial buildings, the recycling of building materials, the reinterpretation of ancient construction techniques, and the economic rejuvenation of villages or entire regions through non-invasive architectural insertions. We believe that many of these practices are not only relevant for China, but also worth studying towards a more resource-conscious future for architecture. If you haven't had a chance to visit the exhibition, I kindly invite you to come see it before July 4th when it closes. And I also invite you to check out the various offerings on MoMA's website, which include an interview between Zhu Pei and the curators, as well as a video that discusses the wonderful porcelain model of the Imperial Kiln Museum that we were able to bring into the museum's collection. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our tonight's speaker. Zhu Pei founded Studio Zhu Pei in Beijing in 2005, and he has produced an extraordinary body of buildings of cultural institutions that have made him one of the leading figures of his generation of architects. His works have been exhibited at institutions including the Venice Architecture Biennial, the Centre Pompidou in Paris, the V&A in London, the Sao Paulo Art Biennial, Galeria Edes in Berlin, Harvard, the Maxi in Rome, and MoMA. His works are represented in the collections of MoMA, the Centre Pompidou, the V&A, and M+ in Hong Kong. He has taught at Harvard and Columbia Universities and is the current dean of the School of Architecture at Central Academy of Fine Arts, CAFA, in Beijing. In today's lecture, Zhu Pei will talk about his approach to contemporary architecture through the lens of ecological and cultural sustainability based on what he calls a Oriental view of nature. In particular, he will be focusing on one project, the Imperial Kiln Museum in Jingdezhen, which is currently on view in our exhibition. Zhu Pei will shed light on the design process to explain his design philosophy. And in the last part of his lecture, he'll present some images of materials propositions from other projects to explain how his philosophy gets translated through different tectonic terrains. Please join me in welcoming Zhu Pei.
Good evening, everyone. It's really special. During the pandemic, I can travel from China to Copenhagen, invited by Martino and Nader. Thank you, Dean Nader, to organize this such great event. And also thank you, Martino, to such kind of an introduction to me, and also for inviting me to be part of the amazing exhibition, recent architecture from China, still showing in MoMA. This is such great honor to me to be there to share my work, my thought, my experience with everyone. My topic tonight is architecture of nature. It's the ideology of experimental approach. Based on the conversation with Martino and Nader, I'm going to focus on one project, which is Imperial Kiln. In the last few years, I really focus on this project. And definitely, I also try to explore a little bit, other project to generate some material idea to see how, decision-making, especially in terms of tectonic construction and so on, based on the Chinese, the situation. The reuse, renew, recycle recent architecture from China. This is so meaningful for the practice, contemporary practice in China. And, exhibition through the keen observation and the very deep research to discover the younger generation of Chinese architects to find a way to approach our contemporary architecture. They based on the very strong, rich, the material and the cultural tradition in China. Even our architect show here his work is quite a differently in terms of architecture language, but they do share the one interest, which is ecological and the cultural sustainability. Everybody working very hard. Their work not only contemporary, but also they try to formally root into the Pacific soil, which is Chinese traditional cultural context in China. Maybe the landscape painting is a very good example to explain the Chinese culture. Some people said the Chinese culture is culture for art. I do believe, for example, when you were a child, you was training, basically beginning with the calligraphy, and then, standing in the memorial, and then, set up with the, like thinking or like the music. In the beginning and end of your life is art. So this landscape painting I choose is done by Gao Kegong, who is very significant, the painter in Yuan Dynasty. Those two paintings have represent highest achievement in terms of Chinese painting history. And what we can learn, what's the inspiration from those two paintings, especially for the architects or artists? The first thing in my mind is nature attitude. If you closely look at this painting, the composition of the painting is nature dominant, but you still can feel little artificial housing here, right? Sometimes you even see the fishermen somewhere, but they take on very small portion. So everything is based on the unity of man and nature. This is a very old Chinese philosophy. Second thing is my landscape. This painting even done by like a 13th or 12th century, but they give you sort of an abstract instead of a representation. If you compare the maybe like a Western oil painting or Chinese, they do have some different, ideology approach to nature. For example, like the Chinese artists never sit down in front of a mountain to sketch them. They would like traveling many months inside the mountain. Once he came home, he tried to put, everything, especially for his mood, his memory, his experience together, line on the paper. For example, like this painting, exactly the experience is not a representation for the Pacific. They do have some, I believe, a strong connection with contemporary architecture. And the point I really want to emphasize, this painting is sort of incomplete integrity. For example, the painting is some part is like empty, the big peak, the river, forest, but they quite kind of, a lot of fog, like open, right? It's so much inviting, welcoming the people to creating the work together with artists. For example, this gives the art so much powerful in terms of timeless. Even today, when we, if you concentrate, look at this painting carefully for a moment, you're probably going to begin to get a feeling about the spirit. And also you'll feel a lot of imagination. I feel architecture strongly to associate with incomplete integrity. When the MoMA have interview about this exhibition, the topic I'm emphasize the incomplete integrity strategy, how I apply for the architecture design. So this is come out my, ideology about what I'm thinking, how I approach the architecture that I practice, or when I thinking. For example, the architecture of nature is basically just try to rediscover the root, which is more cultural root, and also ecological root, climate. And you can, like you're building really deep into the specific culture or environment. So I think this is one of the major things. Another one, definitely architecture is art. You have to create new experience. I believe these two paths going to, team together, become to the creation and the root. One day you need somehow deep to associate your culture or climate specific. For example, a lot of architecture today, especially under the global, the climate change, right? If you're traveling in China, I use China example. A lot of New York building or the cold area building, they build in Hong Kong, build in Shenzhen. They never think about the Pacific. They never think about, okay, the tropical area, you need some architecture to think about more shading, ventilate, protect from the rain and so on. But right now, architecture is neutral. Doesn't matter where you are. I feel I strongly try to against this approach. The reason those buildings still exist, we also feel kind of makes sense in certain level because the air conditioning. They cost a lot of energy to support. We build a lot of tropical typology building into the cold desert, but this still can work, but it's not long-term, not ecological the idea. But definitely, I also try to summarize like a 5 points I understand about, for example, like site orientation. This is more like associates Chinese. The feng shui is talking about where's the sun, where's the mountain. The building or city always built back against the mountain facing to the open field, water. Building always to build with more transparency to catch up the sun. But when you're back to the north or cold wind, you have to solid wall. I think this is a very basic sense for the ecology. This is very smart, actually. But today, once we have technology, we start to, forget this issue. The feng shui actually is very sensed. I call it, it's more like a oriental view of nature. This is very special. The Chinese, when they build this building, they always think about orientation. Definitely the structure and the form. This is talking about, like today I visited the studio, I saw students focus on the form, focus on the material, form design. But what is the tectonic means, I believe, how you translate or you give the poetic and artistic expression to the structure, translate this structure into the architecture form. Structure form is architecture. That's built, more true, more, straightforward. Definitely is a sponge architecture, more talking about porosity of architecture. This is if you compare the Chinese traditional architecture, you feel somehow work. You feel many, like a sponge. The traveling is like a corridor, courtyard, overhand, a lot useless, the space. For example, compared to the maybe Western building is much straightforward in and out. But this is maybe for today, I feel architecture is more talking about the experience, like the painting, the Chinese philosophy always emphasize most important thing for the Chinese architecture is wandering, a time, experience, and so on. The cave nest, this is not only the typology of the space, but also ecology, the idea. They can easily to balance the climate. And the last one is incomplete integrity, I mentioned before, right? And let's move to the project I just realized a few years ago, Imperial Kiln Museum in Jingdezhen, China. So this view from the Imperial Relic Park to the museum. So through this view, probably you can get a sense of what's the reality for this city. Jingdezhen is located south part east of China, just 100 kilometers south from the Yangtze River. The Jingdezhen used to known as porcelain capital because they had this city has been produced pottery more than 1,700 years ago. During the Ming and the Qing dynasty, Jingdezhen export huge amount of porcelain to the Europe, especially for the Mediterranean region. And we probably already know the blue white porcelain and so on. And so this is a whole city just based on the porcelain industry. The early city development along this river, the river is the only way they can transport their product. So city from Song Dynasty, if I go beyond this location, is Sambao, which is start from Song Dynasty. And then for the Yuan Dynasty, Luoma Qiao is this area. The Ming-Qing Dynasty, they became Imperial Kiln from the Ming Dynasty. Okay. This is used to be surrounding, not residential, no artificial things, always mountain, hill, forest, river, creek. That's the typical Jiangxi, the image. If you are interested in the Jingdezhen history, probably you can discover in the 17th century, the French missionary, the Sang Hongxu, he spent a lot of time, almost 20 years in Jingdezhen. He just described even like a 17th century, the whole city, like a big park, the mountain surrounding in the night is red color things, the burning the porcelain. And even the early of last century, American diplomatic ambassador Frank Lenz, he took a lot of pictures for Jingdezhen. He described how different in terms of culture, in terms of how people survival in this area. But if you close up this urban fabric, quite an interesting way. It's growing naturally. The small alley always perpendicular with this river. In order to bring the stuff. And then big street parallel with this river, the river. They bring the market, commercial things together. But when you walk into this city, the small alley really, really narrow to approach to the river. For example, they have overhand. This is not only safe land idea, but also the really sustainable things. Jingdezhen is so hot in summer, very cold in winter. The roof overhang, the shading crowd, the people feel comfortable, especially when the narrow became to the wind tunnel. And then people, once you walk into the house, this is typical, the courtyard house, like vertical courtyard, like a chimney, they like effect, they bring the air up. So people, this is the visual, how people survival in such hot with the place. Winter, very cold, snowing. So how people can really survival? They apply for lot of the ecology, sustainable idea into their housing. This is the kiln complex, including the workshop, the brick kiln, and also the residential. So this is like a seal of the city. The early settlement of this city It's developed along this kiln. For example, they not only burning the porcelain, but also the people use this space. It's the meeting and the social place. For example, winter very cold, right? The students just take one warm break, put in the school bag, they can warm the whole day long. Even school can move just adjacent this kiln, take advantage from the heat. The summer as well, people social here. So this became to their important the meeting place, not only production place. So this is when I start to work on the design. I walk around wandering the old city. And then this is a restored of one brick kiln. Look at this kiln, it's so thin. Just a piece of brick. This brick is 23 by 9 by 3, the size. It's very thin, 3 centimeter, right? And then they use the stone, like a big brick base, never demolished. But this shell, they demolish every few years because they have to keep the certain temperature of the heat. So for example, when they're making this interesting, the kiln, the vault structure, they without scaffolding, maybe I just like this really small video. For example, they use finger to control, more like we work on the 3-dimensional object or surface today, right? We cut in the median of cross section. They use finger, you can see his finger to control setback. Each piece of brick going to getting smaller, or bigger in order to they can achieve double curving surface of this wall. It's amazing. This is, I feel, this is not only the technique, but they use brick to build things. This is their, tradition. Not only build kiln, even the residential things like I mentioned before, right? The brick they have to demolish the kiln, and then a lot of recycle the brick. This brick have a glaze, the burning million times. Maybe they keep doing recycle, build housing, even cover on the street. So this is their tradition, and our side is adjacent. This is a relic park for the Imperial Kiln. Used to Imperial Kiln is here. Surrounding, even today, a lot of ruin relic for the like a kiln. So this used to be occupied by the fire station and their residential, like a government, the building complex. They relocate. We're going to start build a museum here. This is after we build. So you feel kind of the contrast when you first look at this image. But somehow they have a deep root. For example, I mentioned some ventilation idea. I mentioned incomplete integrity. This profile, you can see this building in and out, start to really work dialogue with surrounding. So this is an early sketch I did. The first thing, when I saw they restored that kiln, I never forgot it. But the memory always fresh in my mind. I hard to forget. So I think about how we can translate that kind of form, the kiln form, into the museum. Things they have a strong relationship with the porcelain artifact. The porcelain come from this kiln, never too big from brick kiln. The people daily life in and out. So I feel this is not just architecture form. This is a strong, the memory, strong root in terms of their culture. My second sketch, this is my another important sketch, which is I'm studying about climate. Things local so hard, right? So how I can use this, the horizontal, the vault, linear vault became to internal. I think this is recently lined up as north-south along the axis because of the summer wind orientation. the horizontal wind going to concentrate. I also discovered during the construction, a lot of workers, even very hard known, they lay down inside this. You feel the cool air actually can concentrate this kind of like internal idea. And also the sunken courtyard, like a chimney idea effect. So like what I mentioned, exactly alley and the vertical courtyard. So this is those two images, follow two images talking about in the beginning of the conceptual, really care about the many dimension decision making, especially for the relationship with the urban fabric, how you deal with the heart of the historical the city. For example, like this is like piece by piece, right? This is not very unity, the one object. In that way, they start to dialogue with surrounding. The scale in between the factory beyond. After in 1949, a lot of factory, the 90 residential and the historical Mingqing, the small housing, the fabric is so complicated. Scale, how people, the survival here. So this museum somehow to revival the city, to bring people together, to bring the memory, bring the culture, bring the people all into this public museum. Since this museum built specifically only content the porcelain produced from Imperial Kiln. So this is kind of a difference. You can tell the difference, this one with the previous one. Things after construction, we found out another archaeology side. So we have to redo the whole thing. Construction drawing, design, everything. Thus, no any financial support. You have to support by yourself. For the next photo I would like to show is more talking about construction and tectonic decision making. For example, look at this model, right? This is not done by 3D printer. Especially for conceptual design process. Normally, I not allow my staff to use 3D print things. You only use hand. Once you can build, use very single cutter, simple material. Actually, you can make a complicated the architecture built into the system. For example, if you look at this detail, right? So it's typical they are in the how you can achieve, such complicated things. You have to find some way. I feel this is a dialogue, a deal with the construction, deal with the knowledge, deal with the experimental process. For example, this is a model getting bigger and bigger. I just want to really, sometimes I'm not really trust computer. Computer always please you to convince you, okay, this is good, this is light enough, this is dark enough, this is good enough. But I have a lot of listen. After build, I feel so much difference with my, what I imagine. But only physical model, you can, through at least my personal experience, I can feel, I can make a judgment. I can, decide this is right or this is wrong. For example, we keep making a lot of model. For example, this piece collected by the MoMA. And this is also like a piece of art. I just use a porcelain. This is a local Song Dynasty. They call the bluish white porcelain. Actually, this is original. Like almost 1,300 years ago, they have this kind of a porcelain. So this is after we finish our design. surround, you can see the surrounding historical, the fabric with factory, with social housing later on. And then the most people going to approach from the relic park. So this is a much open field, but this building, you'll never see the whole thing. This is you have to really remember, most of the time, we never saw the whole architecture thing, whole image. So the people walk wandering here and then you approach to the architecture thing. So the program, so how people to really experience this design, the program, we have permanent exhibition, mainly only, it's not mainly, it's only collect the porcelain was produced from the Imperial Kiln. Adjacent, right? Adjacent, nothing else. But we do have a temporary exhibition. This is a pink, like a permanent. This is a temporary exhibition. For example, the visitor going to go here, and then you go along, you see the archaeology side. It's from indoor, outdoor, indoor again. And then you go downstairs. And then office entrance is somewhere here. Sorry. The office entrance is somewhere here. And then this loading truck come back into here. And then we have a temporary. So the auditorium in front, cafe, bookstore, is more socialist public program. So base one level, actually it's lower level. This building emphasizes, more the program actually is underneath of the continue to go through the discussion. But during the time, walking to the courtyard along here, you see the museum, people work on the restoration work, even here too, temporary exhibition. So sometimes this part of the permanent exhibition. So this is more like this section. This is talking about more material decision making. Everybody know, even for today, no way you can achieve the museum or public building built based on the code if you use pure brick structure, especially for the wall. This never work. So this come out with one question, which is how do you do that? So for example, even like a Roman time, they not use pure stone or brick. They use the first layer is the stone, and then they use concrete, not steel concrete, and then finish level, they use stone or so I feel maybe we can find this way. The structure is concrete, but brick is more like their form. Like the form work for the first, for the concrete. For example, we have a lot of sections to deal with how we deal with the concrete slab, how this concrete shell, the cover by the brick. For example, this is a construction star, and this is a lot of the brick, recycled brick, right? You can find it almost everywhere in Jingdezhen, in historical town. We're doing the experimental practice. Actually, this is not mock-up, just on the real. They practice, they like mock-up. Once no good, we just tear down those things, the brick. And this is the important thing. We use very thin the wood wall in order to this form like paper, really, really thin, soft. And then we use convertible, or I call it adjustable, the scaffolding. They use metal rod we use computer that can control the double curving, catch up the point. And then to generate, to start to form this very soft, the wood form into the piece. This is like one piece of the unit. And then on this wood form, we're going to lie on the the brick, for example, layer of the brick, and then concrete. So once we finish, this is a probably we finished. Martino, this is maybe it's a difference what you saw before. We used to have building, but just recently they tear down the top part just because some official said, "Oh, it's so ugly, beautiful museum, ugly building." They tear down the residential. So I feel sometimes frustrated. Once I come to here, my God, the building already gone. They only keep the 3 level. They said, "Okay, Pei, this is better. We lower down the surrounding," but they never really respect the truth. I think just the fast, when you work on China, you have a lot of frustrating issue. So this is when you close up, you can see this is a recycled brick and a new brick, more like a mystery, the finished layer. This is a very rough. And then they have very peaceful, clean, soft, the water garden front. So this is a water garden, rough museum beyond factory. So this is a working, together. This is you can see this building still there, right? This photo is like earlier photo I took. For example, the building is here, but right now became to here. They cut the building out. So you can see the texture. It's very rough. This is an interesting, the garden. I consider this is a water garden. The people, when you approach to your museum, the first thing you work on this gravel, the surface on the ground, and then you listen the sounds of water, and then beyond you're going to see the bamboo. This is like very Jiangxi, very typical local, the cultural thing. This water also I install like a piece of art. This is a stone, that's pebble. The big pebble, most of the pebble is underneath the water. Only few, like a fish bone, little bit pop out. So the Chinese always consider the whole world is just like a water with 3 islands. So this is sort of a Asian Chinese, ideology about the universe. So you can see this is the pebble. Everything done by on-site. You never can design. Probably you have to standing on site to let people, okay, this stone, basically the stone just lay on here, we just pull on. Everything work on quite interesting. This picture, actually, I like very much. This is horizontal, the card, actually inside is auditorium. And people, when you see, you can see through the water, and then only few stone, like a garden pop out. This is like outdoor, semi-outdoor for the cafe area, for the tea outdoor, people can see that. Once you walk in, this is a big, like a foyer or like a first gallery. I feel exactly what I want when I saw it, especially after this insulation layout. Even this glass case is designed by ourselves. It's very minimum. So you just feel this porcelain artifact just floating in the air. So this is so transparent, very rough. And then both ends is opening. It's the light can be concentrated. And also you can see a lot of natural light. It's also on the sky. So this is a connect to the bookstore and the tea cafe area. They go further, they connect to the auditorium. At the same moment, you also can go to the permanent exhibition. So once you walk in, there's some order. There's some sequence in terms of how you move. For example, this art much bigger. When you walk in, you're going to see the sky, the outdoor, only from here. And then this space apply, try to indicate where you're going to go, which part is going to major place. So turn left. This also A tree also connect. Or this beyond is the bookstore. So once you from interior go to semi-outdoor. So this open arch, the structure, and the enclosed structure was arranged and interval from each other. One enclosed, one open, one open. I just encourage people to walk wandering of the museum, even the light. Definitely, it's perfect for the porcelain museum. It's not perfect for the art museum, right? We need a climate control, or we need a humidity control. Porcelain never fear about that. So you can go outdoor, and then beyond is amphitheater and also the archaeology. So this is amazing. I like this part. The vault structure this way, that way, start to really make people feel not always talking about you. For example, I really want to create a similar experience with past, like kiln, the people, porcelain. I feel they have strong blood relationship, consanguinity. So I feel the museum should be like that. In Jingdezhen, a few years ago, they built another huge museum, porcelain museum. I think it's not good for porcelain product, only for the aircraft or for the car. It's grand space. You lost the sense. So once you walk in, you always strong feel that's relationship. So this material extremely simple. The concrete pour on site, this arch, glass, you also see beyond. You can see also the downstairs, right? Lower level. Once you walk around this archaeology site. This is what we found after starting the construction. I feel this is a perfectly people to take break, sit down here. The younger students, they can walk around, you can see the beyond arch by arch. So this vault structure is make people feel comfortable. You can always try to walking around. You never want to stop. You have the motivation involve you to walk around. People also can walking down to the other major courtyard. This is we have a lot of like historical building foundation activity from this side. So, and then we back to after archaeology side, you go inside again. And then you go inside, you're going to see the, in the end, they have very subtle stairs to go down, bring the people. So this is a freestanding the glass case. I feel is perfect. Actually, when we construction this museum, even one artist, very well-known artist, Xu Bing, based on New York, he said, how you can manage how, they expect after those things installed, how it looks like. Since a typical museum is, most of the things you have to rely on the wall. But this is why everything is freestanding. Because this, I feel that's perfectly for the people, for the person. And then people can go down gradually, really subtle. You see it beyond light. This sunken courtyard not only give you light, but also they ventilate. You can see this, we have a lot of door or window, solid pieces. They can open, can bring the air into the vault structure. This glass case layout based on the fishbone. Fish belly is shaped like a fish belly, right? But the glass, the case installation based on the fishbone. Everything have the relationship. More emphasize people, product, exhibition, exhibit, and also the museum. So even the one side is no the courtyard, but they have the little skylight. So people can have, once you take a stair, go here, you're going to motivate your approach this small atrium since they have the much lighting here. And then we have a wood door I mentioned before. Once you walk this door, this is temporary exhibition. Sometimes they can connect each other. So concrete, you can see this is concrete, very rough concrete. This is really a challenge. You know, Jingdezhen always raining during we poured this concrete. It's raining season. Once you have the wood form work done, metal bar, wow, thunderstorm come. And then make you never can sleep during that time. My team just keep calling me. Even once I travel in New York, I keep like phone today. Okay, it's a problem. You know, people really worry about that. But I think it's fun. This is maybe the recording the reality from the nature. So like this is courtyard. It's beautifully. You can feel the beauty of the nature, like the poetry. The Tang Dynasty poetry always talking about the sound of raining drop to bamboo and courtyard and so on. This sort of the poetic. This is another small courtyard, a house. They associate with different program. This photo take from the little multifunction conference room, like this size. And then outdoor have a little courtyard. This is a typical permanent exhibition gallery. This is like outdoor, the tea house, for example. This is some activity inside. This is a courtyard. You can see that during the sunset, you feel the poetic way. And then when you go back, the stair going, bring you to the up. Things you see up from the atrium. And then you have motivation to go up. The beyond is collate, is multifunction, connect to the lower level of the auditorium, and also co-chat and so on. And then people going to walk. In this museum, there's no staircase. All the stair is in between, exposure inside the gallery. Because, for example, I encourage people, the wandering or movement never stop. You just like when you're stepping up the stair, you still feel you'll be part of travel inside of, exhibition. So you saw the little light, right? That's going to attract you. That's one of the attract point. You feel the skylight brush on this masonry brick wall, the old brick and the new brick. This is, you can see this curvature. Once you have light cutting through this light is going to be changing, and then you feel you want a touch. So architecture associates not visual, mainly for the experiment, a touching, even the smile, light change, constantly lighting change, going to be really motivate people to move inside. This is the key for the architecture, the experience. So this is once again, you start to walk up. This is the foyer of the auditorium. And then you back where you start. Actually, this is a foyer. You can see this is the lobby. We have entrance, also have open piece of art, like protect from the rain and sun. People also can, from here, go directly to the auditorium. This is associates public, even museum closed, but this lecture hall still can running for the public. And also like the tea room, cafe, bookstore, they can totally independent. They have different access from outside. And then this auditorium, like a 1-volt structure, which is just like a similar like when I first saw the traditional brick kiln, 2-level. They cut in 2-level. Kiln inside 1 level, but people, the craftsmen work on the lower and the upper level. So this is almost like the highest kiln, almost like 10 meter, 11 meter. But for our highest point is 12 meters. Most of the 1 level is only 6. So I want to control the similarity experience with the past. With the past experience, I want to recreation. So I feel this is a lecture is more like the meditation thing, like academic. So people need somehow to feel the respect. So this is a kind of a church. Like once you walk in, you feel the natural light. This is reflecting the old brick kiln. They have an observation hole to see the color of the fire in order to, they can get a sense what's temperature of this fire. And then sometimes they threw the wood inside. So this, I'm really also try to catch up this kind of sense, especially this horizontal slab. I did a lot of sketch. I back and forth study if I need to keep or I need to get rid. Other people feel, okay, this is maybe too much. We need to concentrate on whatever listening. But I feel lecture hall also need maybe. It's better we have something else. For example, like today, the elevator never bothered me, right? Because my lecture may be good. But even you enclosed, the contents is not interesting. People also lost their mind. So this is like an opening for this museum. We do the pre-show. My work along with Xu Bing and another, the 3 artists' work installed this porcelain museum. We try to make a dialogue with art, with porcelain, traditional. So this is horizontal cut, exactly the same level with the surface water garden. If your talk is not very interesting, I would like to see beyond the horizontal. This is a T-roll. This is like outdoor. You can walk out, but horizontal cut going to attend, people going to attend to sit down instead of standing, since they're facing west. We need to block the sun. And another reason we're making this very linear horizontal cut, because archaeology talking about underneath the earth. The people sit down here, you can focus on the archaeology side. This is the imperial archaeology side beyond. So I feel this is the people really like this place. Everybody wants to stay here to listen water, rain, and beyond. So you can see from outside, you still can see something happen, but you cannot walk directly. Since we have water, right? We have the water to separate the public with the inside of the museum. This is a lot of people after museum tour, they're sitting here to have a cup of tea, reading the book. So the next slide, a few slides going to emphasize what I mentioned, the sponge of architecture. It's more like I mentioned, the porosity of the architecture. It's more like a sponge. You can feel the wind, the visual can be concentrated in your building. Even this door, even here, the glass, you can enclose, but you still can open. So after this, I think one of the achievements for this building, I'm really proud of. This building don't need to use air conditioning in summer. We never use, we do have air conditioning, but it sounds like this. But in the beginning, I should be insist on my early idea, but a lot of experts warning me that's never work. But since the shell or wood so thick, and the two layer of brick, and also thick concrete. Concrete also have an insulation layer. So actually you never use air conditioning. I feel this is like exactly like Martino and his team try to discover, under the climate change, how architecture can be smart, intelligent. I feel it won't be necessary we focus on the technology, but we still can use intelligent, the wisdom or past, experience to give us some inspiration to achieve the modern contemporary idea. So this, maybe we have the video going to very quickly. Yeah, we'll have a little bit of time. So you can feel the complexity of this urban fabric. So this curving little hill here, and then the subtle curve for this building. Building is somehow horizontally laying and adjacent hill instead of monumental approach. Light consistently changing during the day. This is like creation. 水见过一杯的山嘛 ，Flower Garden. Yeah, you can see this glaze, the brick. Yeah, you can see. So this end of the museum. Maybe I just quick run through the few slides. Oh, okay. And maybe I just use a couple of maybe the image. This is I did another the cultural center, which also be part of a historical town. Anhui Shouxian. This town is a ancient town is more than 1,000 years. Our current town is a historical town start early Song Dynasty. In the beginning, we still have some, part is belong to the Han Dynasty. It's very far away. Emperor's brother used to be here, Han Wudi's uncle actually. He stay here, and we're going to build one cultural center. It's somehow middle of nowhere. It's not inside of old town, but for local, similar Jingdezhen, part of used to be same region. And you can see the alley, courtyard, a solid wall, small window. This is a climate issue, right? Courtyard became to their significant the space. So this building basically is like a word inward, like metaphor of that old town. Old town is surrounding with all the water, but solid city wall. But the inside is like a spawn, really messy. A lot of urban, the courtyard house, really messy. But this building somehow deal with this idea, more like a main courtyard and main courtyard. But we have 4 major program like library, art museum, archive room, cultural center. But I create a series courtyard with a public corridor. This corridor like a snake in 3 dimensions. The people, if you're walking inside this building, you never can interrupt the program, or you have to go in. You can walk whole day and protect from the sun and rain, but you still can hang on here. You can choose go in, you can choose out. This is kind of a Chinese garden experience, wandering. Once again, I mentioned the wandering. So this material decision making is purely concrete. It's almost nothing else. It's a concrete for the exterior, but probably everybody know, right? When we're doing the concrete, the more economic way is one side is concrete finish, the other one is different material. Since we have to deal with insulation, waterproofing, except you use, I don't know, I never done that before. Maybe too luxury for me. It's good concrete can be protect the water concentrate. I don't know. Even there exists in this world. But we always have used the concrete, deal with outside it's concrete, inside maybe just like a stucco wall, in order to making the layer insulation and so on. But the structure is concrete. And for example, ceiling is concrete, and then floor is maybe something else. So we have to do in a smart way, or you have to pour the concrete twice, or you have to use your wood framework twice. That's really, for example, if you saw that building, maybe they pretend to a symbol. Actually, it's really complicated. I don't think that's the tectonic way. We have to be true. We have to be reality. And, based on my understanding about tectonic, we have to really transform the structure to the architecture form. That's the one way. We have to find a smart way, simple way, save the material, easy to build. I think that's the concept. Tectonic. So this building like this, probably you can see this is the bamboo, the formwork for the exterior, and also courtyard. even symbol, just normal, just typical one. You can see sometimes we use double wall. Some like this ceiling, for example, if we use ceiling, floor is not a concrete. We just use concrete finish. Things we have above the ceiling is mechanical. You need air conditioning, you need a water pipe, everything is inside. So always one surface is concrete, another one is something else. You can see this is concrete, right? Except the wall, the exterior. For example, if this is the exterior, you don't need insulation. We just can do pour the concrete once. For example, this is a courtyard for amazing this building. The people just always hang on, like in the air, courtyard, bottom, corridor. You can choose sun or protect from the sun. Whatever you feel the freedom, you're always traveling, moving, wandering inside. You can see, once you stay second level, you can see outside of the building, the beyond landscape. You also can see the another level, third level. And then you see another courtyard. So like a snake, the spiral. This is a back garden. Also like a Chinese garden window, right? Behind a stair. Go always on. You can see that this is like concrete. Another one is a mixed concrete roof with the stone wall. Definitely structure is a concrete, the curving, double curving slab for on site, but we use column and shear wall to support the roof. That's the structure. And then this partition wall, we use stone. Things local, probably you can see. This is the Shandong province. This is further north. Very different with the previous two projects. Really rough, cold season. You can see this is their traditional thing. I just basically just use similar the local technique to build a partition wall. Actually, this is not just structure. Inside have the column, concrete column. And this is a roof. You can see this concrete roof, but we not use wood form. Again, we just pour last layer just by hand. People just wash by hand. We feel too much money if you use another wood form to pour the concrete again. Underneath this layer, there's insulation and water. So this is my, very simple building, one courtyard, which associates very old Chinese, the shuyuan, called the little early school typology. 4 buildings close one courtyard. Courtyard became to the soul of this building. It's more like classroom. So this is, you can see this is the tension, right? You can see the curving, the double curving ceiling. We use wood frame wall. So this is a shade wall. This is a structural wall. But you can see the column. This is like a Hongshang, Le Corbusier, the Hongshang church. Similar approach. And we just use color support. This is a structural wall, but sometimes more freestanding in order to let this roof to continue for the overhead. So you can see this is like basically the structure just sometimes shade wall both ends, sometimes the column one end. You can see this is the concrete and stone. This is you can get a sense of what is my decision making in terms of form, material decision making, everything associated what I mentioned, root, innovation, and also I summarized the 5 points exactly, automatically from my heart. So this is like garden window. People actually beyond have the concrete chair. You can sit down. This is permanent chair, and then use the wall, the curving, more associated to Chinese big roof overhead, like a curving roof. This is like a lower level. You can see this is a typical section. The detail of the section. So this is another one, last one. Things I have done 2 projects in 798 industrial setting. This is no longer countryside, historical city. Used to be suburbia, Beijing. It's industrial, built by the East Germany. They have a big arch, for example. This is a Pace gallery. I did the inside renovation. And you can see this is a big arch concrete roof. And then red brick, concrete brick, glass steel. That's pretty much their DNA in terms of the material proposition. And this is that's Pace gallery. This is a partition wall. You can tear it off. Basically, I just exposure the structure. I did almost nothing. Just clean up everything, making a new floor to introduce the heating floor, air conditioning, totally free. This space totally free. And then back to I mentioned another more complex situation. We not only need to keep the old one, rebuild old one, also build a new one. Like 3 things together. For example, this is like a new one. It's like a new gallery, renovate, remodel, existing structure, and then renovation, the factory, warehouse into the lecture hall and so on. Do many things. This is a new part we install. And then this is remodel, renovation, new part. In between, I leave the gap. That's maybe my strategy. For example, this is a remodel part. They exist, use a brick arch. I keep the same thing, but I rebuild this the brick wall, top concrete. Inside have the concrete column, and then concrete ceiling, concrete stair, or on site. Very minimum way, very respect the heritage from the 798 industrial, the factory. You can see the roof, new roof. This is a new gallery, old thing. This is like a transition lobby, a transition space, a concrete stair, concrete ceiling, concrete beam, existing things. And then I add some new piece of wall. But you can see the concrete ceiling and the structure. You can see the concrete beam to support, for example, this masonry brick wall. So sort of a composition. This is a difference with another 3 projects. But the idea is the same. Idea is exactly the same. So this is a neighbor building, existing building. After we tear down the concrete, plaster thing, I believe this wall here. And then this is another transition, new gallery is here. And then this is a convert, the existing steel, the warehouse into the loading area. You can see this is the existing concrete, we just infill with the wall. This is a new gallery, 2-level gallery. The one is use the downward arch concrete to reflecting the Pace gallery, right? You just saw the industrial, the curving, the vault, the roof. The lower level, we use concrete wrap, the long span. So basically, this is what I mentioned in between. This is a neighbor building. We just leave the wall to create a transition the space. This is a new gallery. What's the big? So this is the beam. The more like just a single beam. In order to we can cross long span, we not go to the top level, not go to the like wraps, but I use curving to achieve structure. This is structure. right? The common things, like Jingdezhen, vault, this vault is architecture form. The courtyard is form. You know, like the piece of the roof, the double curving roof for the another one, is a structure. This structure too. So how you make your structure more poetic, artistic exploration? That's the architecture is supposed to do. And this is lower level, the concrete level. Very straightforward. Things we need much more lighting for the lower. Then concrete beam is beam there. So that's probably is end of my talk. Basically, things we discussed with Nader and Martino before. Actually, my work is associated so many the places, the culture, climate. It's very differently, but architects, how you approach them. So maybe the architecture, nature is what is my ideology. To probably after you see through those projects, you can understand, what the work, how I really approach to. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. An extraordinary body of work that would humble any architect out there. And in particular, an attitude towards nature, which is what I would like to focus on. And it has to do, admittedly, with possible differences between Western theoretical perspectives and those of the East that hopefully you can help clarify. But that pose some predicaments for you, which I find absolutely exciting, in part because I share those predicaments, and though I've never had to exercise them with the kind of masterful stroke that you do. But before I get started, I want to thank you for the way that you ended the lecture with an expose of the building technologies that make this magic possible. But then go back to the beginning when you showed the construction of the original kilns, which I believe were all brick. Is that correct? The original kilns were just a brick structure.
Traditional kiln is two brick.
Exactly, right. And just in exposing that, you concurrently expose our modern plight. A good many of the modern structures of the 20th century benefited from a similar minimalism, but without insulation. And in many ways, today's plight, if we take the environment seriously, has to do with the many laminations that are never in exposure. Now, what you do in the name of nature is even more fascinating. There is a Western perspective, and it goes back to Gottfried Zemper and travels through Bodecker, and probably lands on us via Frampton, always in different guises. And it has to do with a mythology about the truth of materials and the way that tectonics is a kind of balancing act of the poetry of materials in the way that they should appear to work. What you do instead, of course, is that you do something that I like to call Roman, in the sense that, the Romans,
Salvation. sandwich, Roman sandwich.
I mean, like the Roman wall basically uses brick as formwork for the concrete that's inside of it. There are many layers, there are many veneers, there are many laminates to the Roman wall. And they in fact point to the importance of language, squashing any idea about truth to materials, because at the end of the day, your buildings are so impeccable in their erasure of everything, from electrical outlets to heating diffusers and all of the junk that we are covered by and compromised by. And you either are really, really good at Photoshop, or you're the most masterful architect, because you've been able to absorb all of those within the thick crusts of your architecture. And you do say that at the end, of course. You do talk about the predicament of having to pour two concrete walls because of the cavity that needs to go between them, or the insulation that needs to go between them. You build us huge brick vaults whose roofs are not tile but brick, and
Right.
then expose the flashing. I assume there's roofing material all underneath that brick, or waterproofing of some sort, entirely under those vaults, that then need to seep out at the flashing edges over the concrete. So I guess what I'm asking you is, could you elaborate on what you mean about this attitude towards nature? In my world, that's called an attitude towards artifice. Because much of what we do in architecture, nature would disallow us to do. And you have overcome nature. And that is what I love about your work. So in a way, you overturn the mythology about the harmony that we allegedly share with nature. So I want you to elaborate a little bit on possibly my misunderstanding of sort of a theory of modernism that has to do with the mythologizing of nature, man's harmony with nature, and in turn, possibly expose an Eastern perspective that I'm missing. But more importantly, also, expand a little bit on your definition of artifice and language as the mechanism through which nature is redescribed.
Okay. And since my topic today is architecture of nature, but this, ideology is not talking about Pacific nature. It's more like how we approach, is want to think the cultural, more cultural thing. But actually, human being culture is generated with nature. I feel it's a lot of wisdom. It's learning from nature. I just want to carry out this idea. But it's not talking about architecture nature, not talking about brick building, not talking about landscape building, it's not talking about vernacular. Actually, it's more, we learn something nature and then we create something with modern time. For example, this is the reason I mentioned the two paths, right? Two groups. One is the root. Why we needed to know the root? Because like 2,000, 5,000 years, people how survive. They must be having a lot of smart idea through the whole human civilization. You don't need to restart again. You just carry on. But you need to know how you learn. For example, Imperial Kiln Museum, I just inspired by their small alley shading ventilate. And then courtyard is also ventilate. But they basically is not just want to ventilate comfortable living condition, but also they consider this is their life. They associate on the street, right? They in a meeting on the courtyard. So this is what I really want to. I just feel contemporary architecture. We need to discover the root, get inspiration from the culture and the climate, the point of view. In other way, we need to create some new thing. So the point of view, the architecture of nature, is more talking about the culture. Things Chinese culture based on the I call the nature philosophy. Very old Chinese philosophy is talking about the unities of the people, the man and the nature. They focus on the relationship. They respect, they learn, but they need to create the things. So I feel this is no longer Pacific or physical culture. This is a nature. This is more cultural thing.
I'm going to go back to some of your roofing details because they are fascinating. You have this incredibly beautiful concrete roof that you cover in concrete. That concrete that you hand pour, no more formwork, it's just packed down concrete, covers a layer of roofing because we know it needs waterproofing, but it is absolutely important for both you and me that when we see the crust of that fascia, that concrete that we represent as a lintel is manifest in the monolith that is that roof. At all costs, you and I must read concrete because that is a manifestation of the simplicity that is architectural form, that which you aptly call poetics. And yet, we recognize that we have to add more material and more complexity to produce that thing that looks more simple. This is what I love about what we do. And this is what I spend most of my life hiding from the clients so that they don't realize, if they realize that we are doing that added labor, it translates into added cost. And so there's something quite consistent about the interpretation of simplicity that you've cast onto us, because we are architects and we kind of know you're lying to us, but in a good way, because you're lying to us in the service of an ethic, the ethic behind an architecture of integrity that you talk about. And that ethic is exactly everything what clients don't care about, because they would do it the fast way, they would do it the cheaper way, and they would do it in a way that is actually historically more manifest in the Chinese temple, which does in turn probably manifest a perspective of tectonic diversification, because the structure would be exposed in wood, the tile of the roof would actually be segmented in order to repel the water, and all of the things that we know that the performance of buildings. There was a moment in which buildings performed, and now we know through rain screen systems that they can do many things within a tertiary or secondary layer. And so this is what fascinates me about your philosophy. And I guess I wonder, why would you need the crutch of nature in combination with culture? Why isn't culture enough? Why isn't the alibi of culture in its crazy manifestation sufficient for you to make a case for a roof that refuses to repel water?
You already explained. It's maybe first thing, for example, I don't know, but in China, at this moment, okay, a lot of clients, they really want to artistic work. It's not just the cheap way. If the cheap way, they never approach Nader, right? So probably they just build anything else. But they also want to quality the architecture. I feel architecture is art. Architecture is art. You have to really, that means that it's not we want to do untruth things, but everything is truth. For example, yes, we just want to carry out the practical, realistic at this moment. Maybe some truth 300 years ago is the truth, is the good way, but today is maybe not. If we try to build purely break the vault structure, the first thing never pass the earthquake code.
Yes, that's right.
Never. It's not safer. Things break kiln built for the person is not people. Their housing, they never leave it. Think the earthquake will go falling down, right? Exactly. So I feel the first of all, even we can achieve, but you're going to use a lot of money. I don't know if we can achieve or not, but I think this is not a smart way. This is against what my understanding about tectonic, about my ideology. I just feel the tectonic, the meaning of the tectonic is smart, it's simple, it's easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A beautiful recognition of the issues at stake. I want to ask something more biographical, if you permit. Tell us a little bit about your education and your absorption of Western architectures and the way in which you operate not as a Chinese architect, but actually as an architect, as a global architect. I see a resonance in your work that is profoundly reflective of many other architectures that are interesting to me. I could cite those examples, for instance, but I want to know a little bit more about your own education and what leads you to these buildings in this particular way, the architects that you love, and why you love them, and how they reflect on both your education and therefore the pedagogies that you pursue as a teacher.
I think the two key things. The first of all, I strongly believe architecture is art, is nothing else. So that's driving me to try to innovate, try to create some new thing instead of rebuild or repeat something. So this may be fundamentally from my heart. I just want to create something. I think that's the one thing. It's the part of my nature in terms of the ideology or methodology. So, and the second thing is I do inspired by art, especially for the Chinese art. I feel Chinese art talking about a lot of nature. actually Chinese culture is the beginning, is the inspired from nature. Early of Chinese philosophy is talking about nature.
Mhm.
It's maybe difference like grace, talking about more the hero, monumental like Plato or. But Chinese philosophy already talking about the daily thing, like what you see. But you see the mountain actually in your mind is not a mountain. I just feel this is a kind of ever inspiration. They form this universe. They form the nature. I think this is a Chinese culture where the star come from. I feel art and culture, which is I call the Oriental view of the nature, which is a little bit special. The perspective talking about Chinese culture. I feel those two things is like the power is to drive me to go this direction.
So then you would say that actually you're not significantly invested in the architecture of other cultures or of other persuasions outside of China, right?
Can you repeat again?
You are not that invested in the architectures of the West?
I think that's also natural. I do. I did. I feel for the modern architecture, we deal the same thing. For example, our challenge for the each day, for example, like modernism and contemporary culture, we're facing the same thing. In terms the nature, we face the same thing. We just have a little bit of slight difference about how we approach the goal. I do spend a lot of time to try to understanding about history of architecture, art of architecture. What's the difference between the like Chinese art, why Chinese art go this way, Western art go that way. But eventually we join venture. Right? So I feel I think the modern architectural history or architectural history is a very fundamental thing. But I need to maybe find out the different perspective.
So allow me for a second to project certain readings onto your work, which you may not have intended and you may not be interested in, but I find fascinating because I bring, let's say, a different set of preoccupations, cultural preoccupations to the discipline. They have to do with, strangely, they have less to do with what I perceive to be nature, but to the commitment that we have as architects to produce new forms of knowledge. And the way that we do that is through an engagement with history. And so, when I look at your work, I see those histories emanate through very specific circumstances that you are building on. I couldn't suppress, and please don't misinterpret this, because the last thing I'm thinking of here is stylistic, which is the least interesting way of looking at this conversation. But really, these are strategic, morphological transformations that change our reading of architectures. The term that you used was incomplete integrity. Is that correct? And I love that because it was, somewhere in that painting, you see a hole, but the only way you identify the hole is through the excavations that run through it. And I couldn't but interpret in the composition of your Kiln Museum a seemingly informal composition, which I know must be composed by strict laws that we can't decipher, but they're very much there. But they produce the effect that Kahn could never do when he did the Kimball Museum. And yet he did that. I mean, the procession of the court and the negotiation between your reading of the building as long striations on the one hand and the lateral connections on the other, that you so masterfully overcome in ways that he wasn't even able to do. Now, he ends, of course, his vaults end in the reveal that is at the top. You actually exploit that as the main view, and you know, the circulation of air and light and all of that. And yet you're able to create a singularity out of all of these striations through the barrel vaults that run perpendicular to it and yet not touch each other, because you have a layer of glass, I presume, in there. I assume that's the only way you can do it, that you have to fill that in. And that reminded me of another complex piece of architecture of some 30 years ago, when Moneo was asked to cover the archaeological sites in Merida, where he also poured concrete walls that were subsequently clad in brick and extracted of their mortar so that the brick would float. And the treatment of light in that one is extraordinary, and simply not as extraordinary as what you're able to do. But what my point is in all of this is that many people look at intertextuality and precedence as a crutch for legitimation. And in your work, I see it exactly the opposite way, that the ghosts of these projects are somehow in there, but they've been overturned systematically. You have done something that these architects either were not able to do, the circumstances disallowed them to do it, or simply history was in a moment in time when it wasn't ready for them. And when I was asking you about your engagement with architectures of the world and your engagement with an international discourse, I was wondering whether you are thinking actively about Leverance on one side and Kahn on the other side and Moneo on the other side. What is the baggage that you hold that beyond nature? What are the other baggages that you have in your that you hold alongside you? Yes.
like the concrete in the middle, and then wipe up the brick. I feel both architecture, I absorb a lot, I learning a lot, I admire a lot, but I cannot repeat. I have to doing my thing. Have to find my own way. I feel maybe the artistic try to push a little bit more, push the architecture into the limit from the modern architecture. So this is what I really want to try.
I've asked my two questions. I'm going to open it up to the floor, to the curators, to other members of the faculty and students to cap the night off with a couple more questions. Elizabeth, I know you have, please go ahead. I was going to invite you, but I see, yeah, go ahead, please.
Dear Professor Zhu, thank you so much for your great presentation. I have a question related to reused material and also construction waste. We all know that not only in current China, but also in a lot of countries, the carbon peak and also carbon neutrality is becoming more and more crucial. So in Yuyao project, you also reuse a lot of bricks. So this leads to my question. What other kind of construction waste materials other than bricks and also tiles do you think also has the large potential to be reused? Thank you.
So your question is, repeat again?
Oh, yeah, sure.
The question is brick and
Yeah, like my question is, what other construction waste materials other than bricks and tiles do you think has the large potential to be reused?
so
Take your
your means why we not use other material?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. I think that's, in the beginning that you really open your mind, but once you're really let yourself be part of a local resident position, you feel the break and the vote, those two things, I cannot drive it off. I cannot get rid of it in my mind. And then I focus on it. I feel the break, they have the temperature in terms of their culture, their community. So this is the reason I'm not choose something else. And also the vote is except the break, the water structure is better is concrete or on-site. That's more reasonable, makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Since we have, I think, not one, but two deans at the table, and you are here specifically speaking in a school of architecture, which we're super grateful for, but can you speak a little bit to the pedagogy that you've fostered at your school, what you think are the important issues for students of architecture to wrestle with? And perhaps does these other questions that your work instigates about the role of history and analysis of precedents. As dean, how do you imagine your school as an architectural project?
Okay.
And working towards the future.
Yeah. Okay. I will try to explain. For the Kappa School of Architecture, we based on the fine art. One of the, is the best art school in China. And that's our soil. So we push our education based on, more artistic, more creating. Definitely, the School of Architecture has to be realized what is the current challenge for the human being. We strongly believe we have to make some response to the the most important challenge, for example, like climate change. I think that's the most important thing for us. We have to find some way to really to tell the student to understanding what's your responsibility. Architecture is art, and also you have to respond the climate change. How we can build the smart architecture, intelligent in terms of ecology, like a sustainable the idea. This is the reason actually today I point out my approach is based on the ecological and the cultural sustainability to approach. For example, our school have a more similar Copernican. It's not big university based. We based on art school. We really emphasize the creation. So I start to reform the school teaching system. For example, we have 5 years, but I want to use the design studio course and the direct like a history or theory course to somehow to become to the fishbone. And then all the rest of the course, for example, like technique, like a physical, like a construction or everything is going to be exactly work together with design, with theory, the class together. Actually, I try to use fishbone to pull everything together, like students understand, what's the Kappa architecture, what our contribution may made for the climate change. For example, we really emphasize, we're not based on the technology approach. We want to base on the more intelligent or more like what I call the nature solution to reduce the energy cost, to make architecture contemporary, it's an experiment.
Thank you, Professor Zhu, for your speech. And I personally come from mainland China, so I have been to some of your masterpiece, and I think like for example the museum in Wuhan and the museum in Beijing as well. And so as an architectural student from China, I've got a feeling like for example, when I'm traveling around China, I've been to the rural area of the Pingyao Shanxi province, and some of the local antique dealers, they tell me that there are a lot of architects. They are buying the old bricks from the Shanxi province because Shanxi province have most of the Asian buildings in China, and to the southern part to build their architecture. And as you know, using old bricks is more and more of a trend as been using in China since like 2012 when Wang Shu have won the PRISIC award. Yeah, so my question is, so like when we are, as an architect, when you are dealing with reusing material, how do you like to make sure or to clarify if the reuse of the material is I don't know, can be ensured as a social justice? Because as we all know, like the divide between the western part of China and the eastern part of China, the cultural divide is really enormous and significant. And so how should we ensure the social justice or the design justice between the eastern part and the western part of China? Thank you.
I feel, for example, like recent article of China Actually, those group of architects like Martino, I feel we share it. We realize our challenge. You know what is most crucial. So this is the reason we think about more cultural than commercial. We think about more ecology, sustainability idea instead of just build very high-tech technical approach. I think we share similar things. I think this is the fundamental. And also you mentioned west or east. I feel the Pacific region, they must have their culture or region, climate, geography, everything. So you have to discover, belong to this Pacific region. For example, if you build something one place, but you carry out material, even old material here, I think maybe it doesn't make sense. The both cultural, sustainable, everything. Things you pay too much, you make too much effort. Why you not use local? So I feel that's not your question about, okay, use old brick is wrong, use new brick is right. It just depends on what you have, depends on what material you choose. It's more makes sense to save energy, much simpler to build, much easier, much cultural concept.
I do have a question. Yes. So thank you for amazing presentation. And actually, I come from Jiangxi. So your museum in Jingdezhen is pretty close to my hometown. So as I remember, you were talking about the purity and simplicity of material in your Jingdezhen project. But for me, the most amazing part is when you sandwich the concrete shell with 2 layers of brick tiles. On the one hand, you host this traditional image of the domes, but structurally, you can produce this long span and threshold condition, which are unusual in the traditional dome construction. And in every respect, it reminds me of the Kimbell Museum projects. It has an image of the dome, but structurally, it's a deep span beams by virtue of the post-tension cables. So these are very interesting to me. So my question is, starting from there, how do you transplant your material system or your philosophy into the context of modern city, where the most prevailing typology of building are residential towers and office towers? Because increasingly, there are amazing museums and small-scale projects in China built by architects like you. But the demand of high-rise, skyscraper, or housing, this kind of modern building still remain absent. They're dominated by Western firms such as SOM and KPFs. So starting from there, do you imagine a way to apply your philosophy or material thinking into more mundane, more ordinary building type? Let's say, how do you build a tower, office tower, with the Chinese identity? That's my question. Thank you.
He's referring to the dominant construction system of the towers.
So basically, you asked me to repeat my whole lecture. Oh, there we go. Okay, so actually, I point out, whatever you do, doesn't matter the type, what kind of type of architecture, high-rise or low-rise, cultural, commercial, your building must make sense. All the decision making, like structure decision making, the materials decision making, the spatial. Yeah, why I make a difference with Kimbell Museum or difference like Raphael Monneau's, the Roman Art Museum, and so on. So I think that everything associates what you believe. I believe architecture if I believe architecture is art, and then you just have to really believe yourself to do whatever you believe. So that's maybe, I don't know if I answer your question. If I build, for example, like high-rise in Jiangxi, I must be think about at least for facade must be different based on my understanding. The building must be translated. They must be have overhang, the shading, you know, like a ventilation kind of idea, rather than like a pure glass box. I think just your idea difference. That's going to be, doesn't matter what you do, even just a single square tower, you still can make a difference based on your own approach.
Let me try to cap the evening off by appealing to both of these questions, one about social justice and the other one about the nature of building types and the locality from which they emerge, with a comment about probably my frustrations, but nonetheless a humility that you may or may not have felt in face of your clients, your patronage, and your agency. We worked on a project last year where we also tried to make logical decisions about materiality based on a terracotta company that was less than 300 miles away, with the idea that this would become the basis for an ethical decision about the material conditions of this library. A public project in the American context requires to go to bid, a public bid, that disallows the architect of the final decision as to where you're going to procure that. So even though there are local terracotta companies that are excellent to work with, if they come in $5 more than the second-rate Spanish company that has to come thousands of miles away, they will go with that, which they did. And we know this story because we also know that many of the materials that we get today in the United States come from China. And this comes replete with notions of international law, labor, and questions of equity that one cannot control. I guess from our perspective, the insistent and systematic compromise that we feel at every turn of every decision we make is evident. There's never a moment that we can look and say that we are doing something ethical, because there's too many layers of lack of control in terms of what we do. I guess I would ask you, do you feel that you as an architect have the agency that we would want to have, or do you feel the same vulnerability that I do?
I did. We feel the same thing. We're frustrated. You know, so this is the reason I build not very much. I think one of the reasons. Secondly, in the beginning, we had to cultivate our club. Maybe first thing, we interview each other. At least I know we have similar taste or similar goal to approach one thing. But secondly, cultivation is to convince our client, okay, maybe you invest a little bit more here, but you can return much more difference, the perspective, the beyond architecture is supposed to be. So I think that's the only thing I can do to convince them, okay, do this, we are eventually, we are going to win. Maybe that's but really, really frustrating. It's not only our client, another head is contractor or design institute. I think so we have to work with like the state-run design institute. I think so they have license mostly. I feel the contractor client and design institute, they always easy to team up against you. That's really a horrible thing. And then every fall is your responsibility.
Yes.
And then, so I think this is really a challenge. So this is the reason I start to try to break up their unity. Okay, I set up something, let them fighting. And then everybody have to work with me. For example, in the beginning, normally client is approach me first, and then I choose the design institute.
Right.
They have to really respect us. They cannot say no, friend of our client. So that's maybe our internal rule. You cannot say anything wrong except internal meeting. So they have to really respect the things. After many years, we reach kind of sort of the methodology to how we, to work together. Really frustrated. A lot of, I have a lot of projects really went bad. Lost control. No way you can control.
I don't want you to end the night with a bad project, but I thank you immensely for what has been an immensely wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.